Right, what's happening, people, and welcome back to the Joey Knight podcast. And to my delight, very, very much requested by popular demand, especially on my live streams recently, we have got Jan from Football Therapy. How you doing, bro?
Let's go. Yeah, man. Delighted to be here. Very pleased to hear people want me to come and chat to you as well. To be honest, mate, I've done a video with you on my channel where exactly the same. Lots of get Joey on. I was like, all right. I'll get him on. You know, just to not gonna upset him so he doesn't bang me out. But here we are.
Do you know what's funny? Yeah. Literally, I always say, like, I kind of stumbled upon YouTube. Like, didn't really used to watch all that much YouTube, but I had YouTubers that I'd watch. So, for example, I used to, and it always, when I say this, I feel like it sounds like I'm saying it just because he's one of my best mates, but I always watch Brian's videos, True Geordies. I was always like, you know, his documentaries, his podcasts with other people and stuff. I always used to watch them. And then probably towards this is going years back, and then there were two Chelsea creators that I used to watch, and that was yourself and George Benson. And obviously when I don't think I'd first started out, but I'd started out. My channel really hit the ground running. Like, I don't know, I've launched channels since, in terms of like my boxing channel and the Joey and Josh podcast and whatnot. And I'm happy with the content that goes off them, but none of them spiraled like the Chelsea channel did. It literally went like that, and within a matter of weeks, I had 40,000 subscribers or something like that. So it happened really quickly. And I remember at first, I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember I reached out to you to come on?
I think on Instagram, maybe.
On Instagram, because straight away I was like, right, okay. I know that Benson lives in another country, but I didn't know where you were and whatnot, and where you were based.
not in London, So
there you go. So I was like, I want Jan on, and obviously you said to me, oh, like, we can do it 100%, but you said we're probably better off doing it remotely. And at the time, being that, you know, you're at this point, you're an OG in the YouTuber game and whatnot, and I didn't even have a home set up. I used to record at a studio, and it just wasn't really, I wasn't doing these sort of Zoom calls and whatnot.
Sure.
And Riversides. And
but that's what the people wanted, man. That's why, you know, you basically filled this appetite of what people wanted and needed. Yeah. So it's good that you were doing that.
So it's a long time in the waiting. I couldn't get you on straight away, but now we've got a set up, hopefully. Fingers crossed, no hiccups, and we'll be all good. Speaking of what is all good and what is not all good, a lot of negative vibes around Stamford Bridge at this moment in time. I don't blame anyone that sort of does feel a real sort of significant element of negativity around the club at this moment in time. I also sort of push back at the people that will vent their frustration at me when I say that, look, there are a lot of negatives going on. There are also positives that are maybe being sort of outweighed by some of the negatives, but I do think that there are some forms of progression and whatnot that I look at. But at this moment in time, the main thing that is really getting to me is that I now believe that we're going to end this season without recording a win over one of the likes of Arsenal, Manchester City and Liverpool. Obviously, one of those fixtures is completely out of our hands now. Anyway, we still have to play Liverpool and Manchester City. I think draws at best would be.
I think we've done City twice, haven't we? They've done the double over us. I think haven't they even played City twice?
Have we played City at the Etihad now?
I think we have. Maybe I think we did recently.
Oh yeah, we just played. Yeah, God, my brain's scrambled.
Yeah, mate, I do not blame you at all for wiping this away from your memory. But yeah, I was fuming that they did the double, because we had him on the first day of the season at the bridge, and that was really unfortunate, because that's when I don't know if Roger was on the bench. It was before he was injured, but it was before they decided they were freaking awful, basically. And it was Maresca's first game, so that was unfortunate. And then we sort of caught them just as they were finding a bit of confidence again, so we're a bit unlucky.
It was the 3-1.
Yeah, we're a little bit unlucky.
It was when I first saw their new boy Mamouche come in, who looks like a baller, by the way.
Yeah. Gvardiol slapped us up, didn't he? Constantly down the left. It was
yes, and they also had the centre back who had a disastrous debut. I think he's come a little bit. Yeah, I think he's come a little bit better recently on. So I do remember that game. Do you know what it is? Right, I get told I get the toxic positivity comment quite a lot. Right,
I get that
and I get told like, oh, you're too positive. I think that is evidence there that I'd forgot that City game, that maybe I am a bit too positive with things, because that had just gone from my memory, and I did a load of content around it, and I'm pretty sure I did a live stream for it. So
yeah, on that though, Joey, like I know we're getting into the big games, but the whole negative positive thing, the thing is like it's just fine to feel shit. Do you know what I mean? Like I did a video on the second channel recently about this, how Liverpool fans are somehow miserable at the moment. I mean, they're going to win the league, but they've been on this poor run of form, and I've seen loads of them moaning. Of course, Man City fans have had it all their own way. Some people are turning against Pep. They spend all this money. They're wondering what's going to go on. You know what's happening. This is Man City that have torn up. Of course, it could always be worse with the likes of Tottenham and Man United. And in terms of like ownership, fan unrest, that's across the board with ticket pricing. There is just this sort of vibe at the moment across elite football where fans are upset. And of course, Chelsea fans, you know, there would be fans maybe a bit younger than us that have only known it, you know, super good. Although, to be honest, like, you know, I'd like to remind people in the 90s, Chelsea were actually mustard as well. We were pretty good. You know, this whole pre-Abramovich thing.
Five trophies in 5 years before Abramovich's takeover.
Mate, European trophy, beating Real Madrid way back in the day in a European competition, all this malarkey. So that's, anyway, the point being that there is ups and downs. There is, I don't know if we could get into all sorts with this, but you know, there's a lot of people who are upset, and therefore they just want, you know, owners out. But I'm so, because I sort of study the landscape of football quite closely, with like ownerships, consortiums, like inclinations to buy football clubs with finances, sports washing projects with Middle Eastern clubs buying big European football, and what their true and geopolitical intent is. There isn't like some magical, like, you know, Roman Abramovich just isn't going to turn up and use Chelsea as a plaything again. And no. You know, there's so many. You know, I sort of always try and think a bit more broadly and philosophically about what's going on. You don't know what happens next, and you know, and there's not this, you know, there's not really asset stripping coming. You know, the owners want Chelsea for money making, but they'll also, you know, I'm just basically frightened of like the Ricketts family, you know, a sports washing vessel, Chelsea becoming that. So I'm just always trying to think ahead, like what's the alternatives, and like you say as well, it's not all bad, you know.
I have the exact same concern, and I feel like more so than ever I am walking a tightrope with my Chelsea channel at the moment, because I've always, like, through the bad times, and don't get me wrong, still get loads and loads of love, and if I go out to Stamford Bridge, it's always love, which I'm really appreciative of. But I do see now that I'll get, again, you know, toxic positivity or brown envelope or whatever commented in my comment section.
It's peculiar that, because like, is it like a cultural thing, or do people believe that we're being paid by Chelsea? Like, I think if you sat someone down, I don't think they'd actually say you're being
Mate,
paid.
if I made a montage of every bad thing I've said, like, I've literally said Sanchez, shit, this person, shit, this manager, shit, and whatever. Like, there's no way Chelsea are going to be brown enveloping me.
Yeah.
But what it is I obviously understand that some things are out of our control, right? And when I say they're out of our control, I mean that we can't click our fingers and all of a sudden have new ownerships. We also can't click our fingers. By the way, have a little look at Manchester United. When Jim Ratcliffe took over, everyone thought, brilliant, this is going to be so good.
Who tried to buy us, by the way, as well.
Who tried to buy us, yeah. He was apparently a Chelsea fan when he tried to buy us. Then apparently he was a Man United fan when he tried to buy them. So either way, but you know, Jim Ratcliffe taking over, they are literally a matter of months in, and there's already been talk of protests. I think there may have been protests and whatnot. Some of the sound bites and the clips that have come from that recent interview of Gary Neville were horrific. You know, so I think that the grass isn't always greener, and I think that ultimately, sometimes in life you will never live up to your first love. That first love will always have a hold over you. And
Sure.
unfortunately, as Chelsea fans, we had really completely unrealistic expectations in terms of what we were heading into in modern day football when this takeover happened.
Yeah,
Because
of course.
there's literally, I would say, maybe 1 to 2 owners in world football who still operate in the same way that Roman Abramovich operated, in terms of this is a passion project.
Yeah,
and I don't care.
I'll lose loads of money. I'll lose loads of money because I've just got way too much money, and we're not going to get into how Abramovich made money and stuff like that. But I love football. I was very firm on there's implications that Abramovich was doing a soft power play in the West with Putin. I think that's absolute bollocks. He just loved football.
Yep.
He loved Chelsea, and we were very blessed to experience that on a sporting level. Also, as well, I feel like you probably agree with me here. Protesting is important. People said, "What do you think of the protest?" I was like, "Yeah, good." Do you know what I mean? I said, I even said when it was on the channel, I said, as soon as you become apathetic and you just oh, whatever, then football fandom's dead. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had nothing against the protests. I like the idea of showing them that we still had a voice and empowering and standard setting, and I was massively for it. Do you know what I mean? So the protesting across the board is important. I feel like the right to echo your opinions so important, and Chelsea fans are great at that. We saw it with the Super League, and long may it continue. Do you know what I mean? And the truth is, if we were winning loads of stuff, they won't be doing it. So I ain't got a problem with that. I actually think it's very good. But at the same time, in terms of looking at it, I'm just trying to be as philosophical, realistic as possible, but hopefully maintaining the standards, which is, I guess, something we're going to chat about today.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to that, because I think it's interesting to get a sort of insight on where your stance is on where the club is at right now and whatnot. And I think we're kind of singing off the same hymn sheet in terms of, look, it is what it is. Let's try and spread some positivity into the atmosphere, because my God, the boys on the pitch do need it. And one certain element that they need it in is in these bigger games. Now, the 22nd of August 2021, for me, it was one of the biggest false dawns in football. This was the day that Thomas Tuchel's Chelsea side, fresh off the back of winning the Champions League, took to the Emirates, right? We had won the Champions League. We had won the Champions League without an all-out number 9 striker. Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, Pulisic gets forgotten about. He was really important in that Champions League campaign for us also. But those guys, you had sort of an interchangeable front line and whatnot, but you didn't have an all-out striker. Then we go and sign, apart from Cristiano Ronaldo at the time, the best bagsman in Europe, I would say. Probably performing at a higher level at that point than even Lewandowski was, maybe, right?
Yeah. And assists as well, and loads and loads of assists as well.
There you go. And obviously you saw the link-up play, and obviously for anyone who doesn't know, I'm talking about Romelu Lukaku. You saw the link-up play that he was having with
Lautaro Martinez.
Yeah, Martinez. And obviously you kind of looked at that and you thought, okay, Kai Havertz was actually better as a sort of second striker at Leverkusen, and maybe this could be something that really, really works well for us. We went away to the Emirates and we beat them 2-0. Lukaku and Reece James. Reece James actually involved in both goals. He got the assist, I think, for the Lukaku goal. If you had have said to me back then, even if you had given me the context that, Roman Abramovich is going to be forced out of the club, we're going to have a takeover and whatnot. If you had have said to me, now the best part of 3.5 years will now go by, and you won't win a game against Arsenal, I'd have said you were mad. If you had have said to me the best part of 3.5 years will go by, and you could also add Liverpool and Manchester City into that category, I would have honestly thought, well, I don't know, has the club gone bankrupt? Do we stand to exist anymore or something like that? Yeah, because for me that's mental. To just pour a bit more on it and make it even worse. had it not been for a last-minute winner, and let's be honest, a last-minute equaliser as well in the game against Manchester United, you could also add Manchester United to that list of teams that,
What a
that
game,
we had.
though. What a
Yeah,
game that
what a
was.
game! Yeah, makes up for it all, eh?
Yeah, well.
But what for you? Is there? Do you think that it is coincidental, or are you sort of along the same lines of me in terms of thinking that this Chelsea side, since the takeover, are not equipped to really go out there and win in those bigger games?
Bit of everything, mate. Firstly, I do think that. I think there's a few. I've used this analogy a few times on different platforms. So if you're watching this and you've heard me say it, forgive me. But I always use the example. I did it with, I think, Matisse the other day. That when you make a pizza dough, I don't know if you've heard me say this, but you always use a little bit of the old pizza dough for the bacteria, like the good old Italian chefs. And people do it with dairy as well, yogurt. Sometimes you add the old bacteria in. And I kind of use the example of, after the golden generation, you had, Kante, Hazard, but Azpilicueta, standard setter, winner, captain, Champions League win. And that was like the bacteria of winning passing on, do you know what I mean? Until, of course, I'd say the ownership, but the sporting directors, the new plan, they sanitized the whole fucking cooking board, do you know what I mean? And there was none of that, like, winning, this is how you do it left. And that's why I'm scared of these kids learning to be losers and not winners, to a degree. So I do think that was a huge factor for these big game moments, because they can all feel themselves against certain teams, know their ballers and cook. But like you say, you're talking about these moments, these opposition. The Arsenal thing kills me, man, because the two most un-Chelsea things for me of late is, I really liked Pochettino as a guy, but I hated how many goals we conceded. For me, growing up as a Chelsea fan, it hard to beat. We don't ship loads of goals. Do you know what I mean? We conceded record amounts of goals under Pochettino, and we got touched up 5-0 by Arsenal. That, for me, is unforgivable, personally. And Arsenal as well. Look, in the Mourinho fallout season, we did the double over Arsenal. Do you know what I mean? Like, when we finished mid-table, we still did the double over Arsenal, who was supposed to win the league that season or whatever, and they finished third. What I hate, I think I heard Simon Johnson say this, and it's true. What I hate the most about Arsenal at the moment is they've kind of turned in many ways, maybe not about the trophies, but as a team, they've turned quite Chelsea-ish. Do you remember where... they're big.
Chelsea of old.
Yeah, Chelsea of old. They don't get bullied. They know they're robust. They know exactly what they're doing, and you just won't score past them. They're the best defender in the league, and they'll tower over you and sort of scare you a little bit. And we've become Arsenal, like these little diminutive. I know this is not exactly how I feel. I do like a lot of some Chelsea players, but in this dynamic, it's been a role reversal. And as a Chelsea fan, I find that quite just unsavoury, because they've got a lot of players like, yeah, we sort of we'll knock you about a little bit. We're not going to score loads of goals, but you're not going to score any past us, and we'll swat you aside, sort of thing.
I actually think that's a brilliant example, because I think that when I look at that Arsenal team that you were talking about there, that had some real individual talent in there, like Santi Cazorla, great player, Mesut Ozil,
Diminutive,
Aaron Ramsey. They had Walcott in there at a time, but at that time they weren't competing for the Premier League really, and they were quite easy to be bullied about, coming to Stamford Bridge and shipping 6 goals and whatnot. And I think that is kind of what we are looking at this moment in time. One thing I was sort of impressed by, and it does go to show that standards have lowered, but at the same time it comes back to what I say about realism. Like, I'm not in control of the standards, so I just want to see us do as good as we can. One thing that I do think is that under Enzo Maresca, we started the season a lot more capable to beat the teams that I feel we should be getting wins over, draws over at worst. I don't mean this to sound derogatory, but in terms of the likes of Aston Villa's, Newcastle's, obviously Brighton earlier on in the season beat them, ended up losing to them after that. But the bigger games especially, I mean, we lost at home on the opening day to Manchester City, and then I thought that performance wasn't too bad. The performance at the Etihad, I thought we went out of a whimper. Could have gone 2-0 up, and after that period of 15 minutes where we could have gone 2-0 up, we literally showed nothing. The game we lost to Liverpool, I thought that we didn't actually play all that bad in. I think on another day, and I think Arnie Slot made a few comments.
He said, I was going to say that. He said it's one game maybe we didn't deserve to win. He said that's the only game. I mean, a few weeks ago he said that.
Drew at home to Man United. Obviously, again, I can only put that down as a disappointment.
They're dog shit, mate.
We should be beating them. There's so many teams that I don't rate to our standard that have beat them. And obviously, in the match against Arsenal, you say about how unacceptable it was getting pumped 5-0 by Arsenal. Mate, I don't even think we did that much better in the 1-0 win against Arsenal. In terms of when we got beat 5-0 by Arsenal, I at least remember Madueke having a chance, and I at least remember a couple of half chances, whereas the other day it was like we rolled over and had our tummies tickled, which is not what you want to see. And then when I compare it to Pochettino against the big sides, right? This is why I mentioned the likes of Newcastle and Aston Villas and other teams around that. I mean, like Brentford, for example, Pochettino was losing against the likes of Brentford. He didn't get a win against Brentford. He lost one and drew one. But when I compare it, there were games, I'll admit, like obviously the 1-0, I think it was the 1-0 or 2-1 defeat. Yeah, Cole Palmer scored a goal. 2-1 defeat at Old Trafford last season under Pochettino. I was really disappointed in that one. Obviously, going away, I think we got beat 4-1 with just the Nkunku goal at Liverpool. However, there were games. Me and Josh banter on the channel about this all the time. We call it the 4-4 win against Manchester City and the 2-2 win against Arsenal because of some dodgy decisions and refereeing in that game. But there were games that, against those bigger sides, and even against Liverpool on the opening day under Pochettino, that was a game that I felt we deserved to win. I think they had a goal ruled out as well, but we definitely had a Ben Chilwell goal ruled out. And obviously, I feel like Pochettino's experience in big games, this is a man that has reached a Champions League final. Whether you rate the French League or not, this is a man that has won a league title. And obviously, you know, pulled off some famous wins when he was Spurs manager. They were Man City's bogey team, and that was a good Man City team and whatnot. So I think that Pochettino was a little bit better equipped in these bigger games. Would you agree with that, or do you think it's the circumstance of the squad we've got?
I agree a little bit. I also think he was riding the crest of a wave of this like form of the players linking up and understanding each other, and then, you know, all this kind of stuff. I think Pochettino, to his credit, he's really good with young players. He's really emotionally intelligent. He's socially intelligent. I'm not saying Maresca isn't, but Maresca's coming in with a little bit more like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this football. This is the long-term plan. Strap yourselves in, boys. Where I reckon, maybe Pochettino is a little bit more of a B-Tech Ancelotti. Do you know what I mean? Where like he's a bit of a player whisperer. Do you know what I mean? Which might, imbue you with confidence in the big games, but systemically, I just think he was flawed. Pochettino. I mean, long term, if you analyse like the footballing landscape, to win, I said this recently as well, to win league titles, you need a sense of control. And this is why, you say Pochettino won the French league, but he also fucked up the French league as well with some insane players, which is monumental, Yeah,
the Lille season.
Yeah. And, you need a sense of control. The Klopp would have won more Premier League titles if he didn't play such risky transitional football. The control teams do better. That's why Arne Slot's changed Liverpool a bit more into a controlling team, and they've moonwalked the Premier League. So, I don't think he was, by any means, a sustainable guy to lead Chelsea to where we want to be. So I kind of understand why they ripped the plan up there. I'm not saying... I'm very open to Maresca being successful, but I'm not saying he's definitely the one. We'll wait and see, won't we? But in terms of, these big games... Yeah, maybe as a character, just from experience, just from, speaking... I actually think Maresca speaks a few languages, but just from being a little bit more don't worry about this, I've seen this, I've been there, I've coached... Yeah, again, I've coached these man. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's another thing as well. Like, oh yeah, when I was did you have Lionel Messi? Was that?
You'd have had him at PSG, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you know, when I was coaching Mbappe and Messi or Neymar, do you know what I mean? He could sort of say that he used to do that, but maybe not as good as you. Do you know what I mean? Like, he has the right to be like to do these little wink, wink, nudge, nudge things. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, oh, you do that a little bit like Messi does in training. You know, what can Maresca do? Like, I know he was an assistant at that City winning season, which I actually think is important, you know, because he was part of an insanely winning setup, and then went on to win a league title after that. And so I do give him credit, but I wonder for the big games if Pochettino. Like I say, I think he did the player whispering thing with Mudryk, didn't he? Like the crossbar challenge and put an arm around him, and it just didn't fucking work, to be honest. like, I do think Mudryk's got a lot of talent, but
I mean, Conference League Mudryk wasn't that bad.
Yeah, but that's this season though, isn't it? So
yeah,
yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe, like you say, maybe it's a character thing. It gets into their heads a little bit. I mean, Thiago Silva was still the club. You know, you could look to these people just around you. Do you know what I mean? And it's just got even younger now, isn't it? So one thing's for sure, like that absolutely needs to change. Like the Arsenal thing hurts me because you're right about that 1-0 loss because it was a shit game as well. But it reminded me a little bit of. Remember, it wasn't the same under Conte's second season when we didn't try and play City. Do you remember? There was that clip of De Bruyne on the ball and Cesc just watching the ball and not trying to take it off him. And they were like, yeah, just don't try and get the ball. And it was like, it wasn't quite as bad as that, as in we're not going to try. But it was just like, Arsenal didn't need to get out of first gear, so they didn't. Basically, it was a shit game. It was one of the, I think it was the only game since Opta's collected stats that there was not a single big chance in the whole game.
It was one of the most boring games I've ever watched.
Yeah, and I mean, the goal was Mikel Merino doing a glance on header. He wasn't trying to score. Do you know what I mean? He was just trying to glance it on in the box, and it went in, and it was that's the game. And they were like, well, we don't really need to do anything else. These guys won't score against us. That was the most damning thing, because they were like, yeah, we've been playing shit, but don't worry about it because Chelsea just won't score. And that was the most damning
so
thing.
when you mention it, the obviously inability to score against Arsenal, obviously in these big games we have scored some goals and whatnot. I think that most of the viewers right now will feel that it comes down to the lack of leadership in the squad. And I feel like there is real leadership in this squad, but I feel like the age profiles of those leaders are just very, very young in comparison to what one got us over the line in the past, but two gets other teams over the line. You know, when you look at Liverpool, it's not a surprise that you've got, I don't want to say aging, but you know, the older players in there, and the likes of a Van Dijk and a Mo Salah. When you look at Manchester City, I'm not saying that it purely comes down to Rodri being out, but a huge part of their fallout has been, of their fall off, I should say, has been Rodri coming out. And when I look at the guys that I would identify as leaders in this squad, I've sort of penciled it down, and the names I'm about to read out are all guys that I huge respect for. Some of our best players, in fact, our best players. But if you put them in other squads, are they seen as much as leaders? So I'm looking at Enzo Fernandez, I'm looking at Reece James, I'm looking at Caicedo, again, very much by example, Cucurella. But then you have players that you can rely on for performances. Obviously, I know he's going through a bit of a dry spell at the moment, but Cole Palmer, Trevor Chalobah, Tosin Adarabioyo, to an extent, they kind of set an example. They're quite consistent. And although I'm excited for the likes of, you know, Kendrick Paez, Estavio coming in, and I'm sure he'll be brilliant. Brilliant players don't actually win you big games on their own. You need that experience of players who are used to battling it out at the top level, who have the consistency expected of them. So say, for example, when I just said about Caicedo and Cucurella, you come from Brighton, there is an adaptation period, and I believe that those two boys have adapted now, but there is an adaptation period, whereas if you're at Brighton, if you win 2 on the bounce and then you lose 1 and draw 1, as long as you win the next one, you know, the mood doesn't really change all that much. With Chelsea, it's very, very different. So when you look at those sort of leader leader players. Enzo, he might have won a World Cup, but he did it at 21 years old. Reece might have won a Champions League, but he hasn't ever probably put 5 starts together in a row since winning that Champions League. Caicedo's great, but sometimes it feels like he has to do it all on his own. And as I say, that's kind of a case for Cucurella as well. So, do you think that it will take us going against what we seem to have done, albeit, you know, you could argue the likes of Tosin Adarabioyo in terms of age, with our transfer business? Or do you think it's a case of sitting on these guys and going, okay, yeah, you made the point that Enzo Fernandez won the World Cup at 21 years old. He's 24 years old now, or 23, or just turned 24, I'm not sure. But, you know, he should be coming into physical prime soon and things like that. Do we sit and wait on these bunch of players, or do we now go out and look further afield and look at a couple of solid 26, 27-year-olds that, okay, we might not, you know, get a reinvestment on. We might not return the money we saw on them, but they might bring us that success in the short term that they could be the difference between us making Champions League slots and not, competing for titles and not. And then ultimately the revenue comes as a result of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff, I think. Firstly, I'm not sure they're just going to, apart from maybe like a striker, or maybe a senior centre-back, I don't think they're going to go with age. There is chat that they brought in Tosin because he was a good, serviceable player, but he is a very vocal footballer, and he trains well. So they're like, there you go, there's your leader, there's your... Wrongly, by the way. There's your Thiago Silva replacement in terms of, like, you know, a good communicator, standard setter, but he's just not anywhere near the level. And, of course, he hasn't experienced winning, which is massive. They are, you know, like you say, Caicedo by example, Cucurella by example, Palmer by example, Reece James. I do think he's getting better as a captain, sort of incrementally, but I did a big, and I love him to bits, but I did have big concerns about how assertive he is as a character. Like, you know, he's not a John Terry, is he? I do like how Fernandez does get stuck in. He's first to the ref. Like, in that season where it all went wrong under Potter, there was a fight against Man United, and he just went straight there, fought for the team, and no one else did. And I thought, all right, you know, we've got ourselves a South American who's fighting for the shirt he's in at the moment. I'm down with that. Interestingly, Levi Colwill has been earmarked for the club as a captain project. Obviously very, very young, needs to focus on this game probably at the moment more than anything else. Does have a touch of petulance to him, which actually, you know, Chelsea, we've always had a few arseholes, like in our greatest times, and, you know, we need a bit of that. I feel like we've been too nice for too long. We need a few, you know, because all the Chelsea greats could have that edge to them, and of course we had the, you know, Diego Costas and rough around the edges players all over the gaff, and Matic's, and, you know, Branners at the back that would stomp on you and all this kind of stuff. So I feel like we have been too nice, and I don't think that's too old school to say. I think you can have a bit of that. But they are banking on the team becoming winners. Now, I think that can happen as characters. I think some people, just as characters, they don't need to win to become winners. Inside, they can be winners and they can develop that. So I do think that's the case for some. Whether we've got those guys, we'll find out. Do you know what I mean? We'll find out. But I think they're banking a lot on that. I think for the whole Chelsea fan base, we would welcome... like a bit of seniority, a winner. But that might come... I know I would quite like us to sign Liam Delap as a profile, but you're not signing an Osimhen who's got this big ego, big character. I want to win. I want to win. You're signing a young... He might be like that, Liam Delap, but he's not obviously that at the moment, is he? He's another young player. So it's tough, bro. It's hard to say. I do think there's a large element of them banking on, well, they're young, they'll get older, they'll get more confident, and maybe one or two will come in, but it doesn't seem like an obvious plan at the moment. But I do think, I agree with you in thinking, like, even if it's just like two will be better, because you can bring in one, like, kindergarten teacher, but he almost needs like a teacher's assistant, doesn't he, to like really hold the floor. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure it's going to happen, mate, to be honest.
I think that transfer strategy going into this summer, and we've already seen it. I mean, we've spent, and I'm sure that they're both going to be, good players, but we spent the best part of 70 million euros within the last fortnight on two guys that I'm going to be honest. I cover football on YouTube. I'd never heard of either of them.
Yeah. I only heard of Quenda because Man United wanted him, and they were all excited about him. That's it. Yeah.
Since looked him up on YouTube, everyone looks great in highlight reels. Yeah, I could create boxing highlight reels, and you'd never know that I'd been hit. But it's one of those. But I think that it's really strange because I think that we definitely need a number 9. However, I also feel like the team has somewhat fallen apart in terms of its telepathy, in terms of its fluency and fluidity since Nicholas Jackson has come out of the team. However, when I look at Nicholas Jackson, if you said to me, name his best trait right now, I think that with a number 9, you want to say finishing, goal scoring should be the first thing that comes to your mind. With Nicholas Jackson, I don't see that as his best trait. I see Nicholas Jackson's best trait as being able to take the ball with his back to goal and work his way out of a tight space in the transition to a counter attack and then support the wide boys for him. So I believe that even if we were to bring in a number 9, this does not spell the end for Nicholas Jackson. No. Nicholas Jackson, we spoke about Jadon Sancho earlier and the fact that they're potentially looking at maybe paying the significant fee to get him out of the contract. If they were to do that, Nicholas Jackson's a ready-made left-wing option for me. Like, I know people... I mean,
he was a winger before. He's only been a striker for 2 years.
Yeah, he had a 10-game spell. So really, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well... do we need to bring in a defender? If we could bring in someone, I had a what was deemed an insane shout, and I think he's found a club now. I'm sure he has. But in the summer, Matt Hummels was a free agent, and I said if we could get him for free, and if he'd take. And I say this like it's small change. It's not, obviously, but if you take 80, 90 grand a week and we can get him on a free, I think that could be someone really important. He's just got to a Champions League final. You look at the void that Thiago Silva's left, and I'm not saying that Hummels is anywhere near the standard of Thiago Silva, but at the same time, he's 6 years younger than Thiago Silva. He was a free agent at the time. So I think if we could somehow get a bit of experience along that back line, that might be good. I say that to then go and say, well, would they start? Because a perfect starting backline for me, if we're talking about it as like a 4, for example, would be Reece James, would be Fofana, Levi Colwill, and then Cucurella over at left back. Sort of moves into a flat back 3 and whatnot. So I think that I'm really as well. I'm confident in our midfield. Again, it doesn't have the experience there, but there is a lot of talent there. Especially with the likes of Andre Santos coming back in. I think he's going to be brilliant. So it comes to me down to a bagsman, a man that can guarantee goals, really, because there's been
and a goalkeeper.
Yeah, there you go.
I was just not going to let you finish until we get to that.
I'm obviously a fan of Georgi Petrovic. I believe that Georgi Petrovic would have saved us. Some people might have thought I was mad when I said this. I said it directly after the Arsenal game. I think that you could go as high as 10 points better off that we would be in the league right now had it been for Georgi Petrovic being in goal this season.
100%.
I can think of multiple mistakes. I believe that Georgi Petrovic probably doesn't let in the goal against Arsenal, the goal that Jorgensen let in against Aston Villa to lose us the match. I think that Georgi Petrovic doesn't let that goal in. So, and there's so many throughout the season, so many big sort of mistakes that I don't think he does. Mike Pender's being highly touted. So goalkeeper-wise, I'm relatively comfortable. For me, I'm looking number 9, and I'm looking at the likes of Samu Omaridian, who were already in for, I think, 17 goal involvements in 22 games this season. Osman is a bit of a, it's a fucking Ross and Rachel from Friends, isn't it?
Well, Mikel's trying his hardest. Yeah, Mikel's trying his hardest to make that happen, isn't he? John Oakley?
Yeah, he's tried hard for a while now, and it's not paid off yet. But he's trying his hardest to make it happen. I'd love it to happen if it could happen. 24 goal involvements in 22 games for him. Obviously, that'd be a big one. And I think, like, profile wise, I think he's the I think out of any strikers that we could list, I mean, Šeško's, I don't want to say he's had a fall off, but he's not been as great this season as he was last. Out of any strikers that we could list, I think that Osimhen's the banker of the lot. I think he's the one that stylistically comes in physically. I think that he's the banker out of the lot. But Gyökeres really is one that I look at. 33 goal involvements in 25 games this season. He's been prolific. Not only that, he's experienced English football. It's mad to think he was playing for Coventry and
mental,
now
what
he's doing on sort of European stage and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the most important position that we address, because at the end of the day, what I do think that we saw earlier on in the season, and it's funny, I can't remember whether it was in this episode or the episode that went out on your channel. By the way, if you haven't already, check out Football Therapy, linked in the description. We've got an episode that's gone up on there. But you spoke about Liverpool, and you spoke about control, and you spoke about the fact that Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool just used to outscore teams, right? He used to go for a shootout with them and back himself to win. Now, until these players develop and be able to hypothetically develop into those players that are able to take the sting out of games, to control games, to win games 1-0, and to win them boring, but not 1-0s where we're clinging on. 1-0s like Arsenal beat us, where it's just very, very comfortable. Till we develop into that side, then maybe we might have to just be a team that outscore teams. And I do believe that with our creative flair, with the ability to counter-attack that we showed so well earlier on in the season, I think if you stuck an Osimhen, a Samu, a Gyökeres into that fold, then I think that we would be better off, and we would be a team that can outscore teams and then hope for the rest of the pieces to fall into place.
Yeah. So there's a lot to pick up on there. Firstly, like you say, with goalkeeper, when you've got a better goalkeeper, your defence chills out more. And when your defence chills out more, your midfield feels a little bit more creative. Do you know what I mean? It does start from the back. I do think we've got lots of firepower when fit, and like you say, more coming, young talent, and we will, by all accounts, buy a right-footed winger. Whether that's something to do with the Madrid situation or not, we will see. And yes, before I just talk about how I feel about certain strikers, I agree with what you said about Nico Jackson, that he just does so much to the attack, occupying defenders, occupying space, like when to attack the space, how to half turns, like you say. Great understanding with Palmer. We'll feed Palmer for goals, So Palmer knows, actually, I can go and finish now because Nico's here. Like you say, I agree, not a goal scorer, but a high-ish expected goal generator, which sounds hella wanky, but actually what it means is, he's getting himself into, all ex-strikers will tell you this, if you're getting yourselves into the position to miss, you're doing something right as well, Yeah. So there's that. So yeah, very valued asset of the attack. But yeah, in terms of strikers, I agree, man. I think they say profile and stuff, but I feel like Osimhen just feels like quite a Chelsea striker out of the bunch. He feels like, I know he was a Chelsea fan growing up or whatever, and he idolised Drogba, so we make all these connections. But like, there is something about him, like there's sort of like arrogance and self-belief, and he's like, he sort of wears his icon quite well. Do you know what I mean? And we so all these other strikers like Gyökeres, great striker, amazing return, but he's not the Swedish striker that I'd take at the moment. Out of the two that play for the national team, I'd take Isak. Do you know what I mean? Like, just seeing what he can do. Don't get me wrong, guys, watching this, we sign Gyökeres, I'll be shitting myself, I'll be well happy, do you know what I mean? But I'm just talking, while we're playing this game, there's something about Osimhen that makes me feel like, him in the Chelsea shirt looks and might feel right. Granted, I kind of felt like that with Lukaku, but I don't think Osimhen would do unsolicited Sky interviews. But maybe you would, I don't know. maybe. But, so I'm kind of with you. The victors would be, Isak for me would be the guy, but I just don't think we could sign him. Arsenal are going to try and throw the bag at him. I think he's amazing. I think, I'm not saying he's as good as either of these strikers, but I think Isak is a bit of Drogba and Henry together, which is quite funny because they're always getting compared for different reasons. The way he can, sort of glide like Henry, operate out wide, but the way he can hold the ball up and do Drogba stuff as well, I think it'd be amazing. But either of the victors, I think Osimhen probably would suit us better. You know what you're saying? You were a really good point you made about Hummels, yeah? He wasn't a free, but he cost like 18 million quid. Serhu Guirassy, the striker from Stuttgart, went to Dortmund. Yeah, he's 27, 28 years old. so he wouldn't block Nico long term, but he's a senior bagsman that just continued to score goals wherever he went. Cost 18 million quid. I was like, why just get him? And then not stitching up Jackson, and you just got this guy. We're not too good to like make a sensible signing like that, but apparently.
I mean, mate, we spent, and I really liked the tenacity, especially in the Conference League that I was seeing from Mark Yu. But we spent 5 million on Mark Yu. Now, how much you spend on a player doesn't necessarily equate to how good they are. We've seen that so many times within our squad. We spent half the money on, or less than half the money on Madueke than we did on Mudryk, and Madueke has done a lot more for Chelsea Football Club at this moment in time than Mikhailo Mudryk has been able to. So it doesn't necessarily mean that. But to use a bit of simple logic, we spent 10 million on David Datro Fofana and didn't rate him good enough. Not even as a backup, right? We spent, I think it was 12 million on David Washington. Who knows where he is?
More than that, bro. I think it's best part of 20. Yeah.
There you go. I don't even know where he is. I don't even know what he's doing. I don't even know whether he plays for Chelsea anymore, right? So clearly not deemed good enough. So the fact that Mark Yu was our backup option going into the season, when we'd already seen enough, in my opinion, to understand that Nkunku was not a number 9, left us massively underprepared. So I think I'll cap it off by saying that my hope for obviously the rest of the season now and for the summer, more importantly, I think that the Conference League is actually massively important in winning. I've bantered Spurs about tapping out of it and whatnot, and probably had banter with friends that are West Ham fans and said, it's not a proper European trophy. But winning breeds winning. Once you get your hands on some silverware, it is addictive, and you do get the feeling of, okay, I can go and do more for this. So I think it'd do wonders for our young talent if we were able to win that Conference League. There's teams like Fiorentina in there still. There's a few teams in there that I think got good.
And Anthony's Betis.
Yeah, there you go.
They're the second form team in La Liga since he joined, which was just mental.
Very, very, very tough assignments there, but I think that, I'm still confident that we can come through that. Hopefully after this international break, if we can keep Lavia fit, Madueke back, Jackson back, I think that, especially when I said about our counter-attacking ability, those are 3 names there that really, really contribute towards that. So that would be great. I think that because of the coefficient, it's. I think we need 1 win out of, like, not just Chelsea, English teams need 1 win out of something like 7 or maybe even more fixtures. It might be as many as like 14 fixtures because of away legs. We're going to get the coefficient.
5th place, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that if I'm basing it on seasons gone by, right, and everyone will be down after that Arsenal performance. If I'm basing it on seasons gone by, for the last half a decade, come the run-in, it's looked like no one's wanted Champions League football. It's got there and everyone's just started losing games that was there or there in contention. Yeah. So I honestly do believe that out of our next 9 games, I think, and this might be very, optimistic to say this, I think if we were to get 4 wins out of our next 9 games, maybe a draw or 2 in there, I think we'd still qualify, even if it was in 5th. Yeah. So I think we could do that. But then in the summer, that's what I want to see. I want to see either Petrovic brought back, or, maybe seeing a bit of Penders in the Club World Cup. He looks terrific, and all of a sudden we go, right, do you know what? He's young, but the sample size looks good. We'll roll the dice. But I do think we need to bring in a number 9. Is there any other additions you'd add to that, or are you pretty much on the same page as me?
Same page. Also, just on terms of like mood for next season. I'm not saying if you win the Club World Cup, you get 100 million. Did you see the picture Chelsea posted today of the trophy at Stamford Bridge? Like the Club World Cup trophy. I tell you what, it looks different, but I really like the look of it, and I thought, I'd love that in our trophy cabinet. And like, I'm not saying we have to win the Club World Cup, but if we're just like out in the North American sunshine, wait, is it in America? Club World Cup? I think so, isn't it?
I bloody hope so. I might be covering some of it.
Because I was thinking, I was listening to the World Cup. I said, that's the World Cup. No, there's the Club World Cup as well. Yeah. But if they're like cooking, some players coming in, like Chelsea look pretty good on the stage. Actually, they've got him coming as well in a minute. The mood could be so different. He would have to win the Club World Cup, but if we look good, a few different players, pressure off, Palmer's, scores a banger against Real Madrid, and do you know what I mean? That could be such a big like palate cleanser for next season. But yeah, I agree with you. Striker, both our channels will be covering that as the story develops. I do wonder left back. You know, I feel like Cucurella is holding that down a bit too much by himself. And I do think they're going to get a winger. That's just the situation, a striker and a right-footed winger. And that doesn't mean we're going to send Sancho back and pay the fine. It might mean they know a bit more about the Mudryk scenario. We can only speculate right now, but they do want that. And yeah, man, like, to be honest, you know, just see Santos back's massive. You know, we've got that Portuguese kiddie who's going to be back up to Caicedo. He's a CDM. Great. Rest Caicedo a bit more. And we just need to get a little bit of confidence back in our star boy, Cole Palmer. We need him to remember that he's an absolute superstar. So it's about getting the injured players back, and it's about Cole Palmer forgetting to care about football again. Because when he didn't, do you know what I mean? He went from like audacious Panenkas to complete hat-tricks to just looking a bit rattled. So we need to sort him out, and I think we'll be all right, mate.
We'll be all right.
Personally.
We'll be all right. It's a good way to end it. Listen, Jan, thank you very much for coming on the channel, bro. Really appreciate
Pleasure,
it.
man.
We
Pleasure.
definitely do a lot more of this. Obviously, I'm guessing that most of you guys, if not all of you, are already subscribed to Football Therapy. If not, you need your head checked. It is linked in the description below. And yeah, more content on there from me and Jan. And we'll link up again soon, mate.
Defo, thanks for having me, mate.
Top man. Cheers, Jan.